come battling. Oh, what a grab! What a highlight!
What is going on? It is College Football Talk. I am your host, Hunter DeLauder, and we are back for a exciting Week 1 recap. It was a very exciting week in college football. It's just great to have it back. We missed it so much, and now it's finally back, and now we get to talk about it. So we did our preview episode last week, and so now today we will be doing recap and probably looking at tomorrow, Thursday, the time I'm recording this, will be the preview episode that will be coming out. So make sure you guys are hitting up the socials right there. See my Twitter or X follow and Instagram. So make sure you're hitting that up, as well as subscribing on the YouTube and Spotify at College Football Talk with Hunter DeLauder. So make sure you're doing that as well. All right. So we're going to get right into it. Most of the games we're going to be talking about today are games we talked about in the preview, because those were the headliners. So obviously those ones are going to be the one most talked about. And we'll get right into it. We'll start with the first game. Miami drains the swamp, as I put it, beating Florida 41-17. It was a all-out, utter beatdown in Gainesville, Florida, Saturday afternoon. From the opening kickoff, I mean, outside of the first down Florida got, it was all Miami. And, there was nothing Florida could have done, honestly. The big things I had questioned about were maybe if Florida was going to be able to change a little bit, or we're going to be able to see anything new from the Gators. A lot of people have been doubting them, trying to maybe make a statement Saturday, and they just didn't have it. I was there. There was the stadium was juiced up for maybe 5 minutes, and it was after a long touchdown run from Montreal Johnson that really ignited the place, and then Miami went right back on the field and scored a touchdown. I mean, that was really the highlight. I mean, Miami led by Cam Ward. I mean, really, really impressed what I saw from him. He was very talked about going into the year, and how, he was the possible missing piece of that puzzle. But I just had maybe question, he does turn the ball over a lot. He did have one pick. It was a careless throw. But it only resulted in a field goal. But outside of that, 385 yards, 3 touchdowns, just completely shredded Florida. And the Florida secondary had no answers. Defense couldn't get any pressure. And when they did, he was able to just escape the pocket, and they didn't have a spy or anything on him. So he was able to just kind of do whatever he wanted to. If he needed to run, he would have, and they couldn't stop him. And that really just indicates just part A, Florida having no answers at all. Napier brought in Ron Roberts to help out with the defense and to help out with DC Austin Armstrong. And again, there's just been no improvements on that side of the ball. Offensively, there's no creativity. It's an offense built for play action, running the football. They didn't run the ball a whole lot. They couldn't get first downs. And as soon as you start falling behind, it's just not an offense that's built to throw the ball. I think they only threw the ball probably 26 times, somewhere around that number, but it's not an offense built to do that. And when that's been the issue with Florida last few years, is that they've been so terrible on defense, is that you have to just completely abort whatever your plan is to go into that kind of must score quickly to kind of keep up kind of mentality. But as far as Miami goes, control the line of scrimmage from the start. Talked about it in the preview. Defensive line was going to be the strength for Miami, and again, it proved itself outstandingly. So Ruben Bain did get hurt. I think he got hurt on the first or second play of the game. It was on the first drive or so, but he's going to be out for a couple of weeks, so that's something to keep an eye on. But Tyler Barron stepped up big time for them. He's the transfer in from Tennessee they got. He completely wreaked havoc. Wrote about it in a report, little article of mine. But completely dominated that front. And then the secondary, which I had a lot of questions about, really played well. Their leading tackler for Miami was from the secondary. That would have been that was Jaden Harris. He had 7 tackles by himself, including half a sack. The linebacker group was really good as well. Talked about them being, that was a trio that I really had circled as like a proven group that could, kind of lead that front, and they did. I was just super impressed. And then just both sides of the line of scrimmage. Offensively, like I talked about, like Florida couldn't get any pressure. I mean, it was almost like I saw Nick DeLatorre, he's a Florida insider. He posted something like on the game. It was like a milk carton with the, we're missing little sticker, and it just said like defensive line for Florida missing. And that's what it was, because Miami just wasn't going to let them do anything. No sacks on Florida's side. I think they had one sack, and it was maybe a late sack or so, but that was it. I mean, they just weren't non-existent. And then Miami again was getting pressure left and right. I think they had 3 sacks, 8 total tackles for loss. Graham Mertz struggled. He only went 11 of 20 for 91 yards, or 90 yards, skim around there. But he got hurt towards the back end of the game and threw an ugly interception in the process. I look back at that; it was towards the goal line, but I didn't really understand where he was trying to throw that, and he ended up getting intercepted by, I believe it was Michelle Powell. Got it, yeah. And then Lagway came in for Florida, so a lot of fans were happy about that, just to see what Lagway, because he's the big 5-star super recruit that they got, and he did lead him down to score a touchdown. He threw a wonky pick too, but I mean, the game was so out of hand that it doesn't really matter. But did lead him down the field, scored a late touchdown. So he's probably going to start this upcoming Saturday against Samford. So something to keep an eye on there, because Mertz is in concussion protocol. So maybe that is a spark for the offense. Maybe you can kind of scheme a little differently, but I wouldn't squarely put it on the shoulders of the quarterback position. I think it starts at the top with the coaching staff, the AD, and then kind of works its way down to like the O-line, just not improving. Defensively, just not there. And I would say, as far as from a Florida standpoint, that this could be a team worse than it was last year. Not even talking about the schedule-wise, just like effort-wise, competitive-wise. Like last year, they lost a bunch of games that they should have won, or just kind of let slip behind, or let slip through their fingers, or at least they were just competitive in them. Like this year, if that's the same group that I'm going to see each and every week, it's a long week, or long year, excuse me, for the Skater Bunch, because that is just not going to be acceptable by any standards, especially a team in the SEC that has a history of just being one of the staple groups in the SEC. So it's not any standard that they want to play at. So they're going to have to fix that. Hopefully they can get something figured out with Samford. But I mean, Samford came in there a couple of years ago and put 52 on him. So we'll see if any changes are made. As far as where the coaching staff goes, there's been a lot of buzz about where Billy Napier, they need to fire him. It's tough. I don't know. You can't fire him after 1 week. If they lose to Samford, okay, maybe they get rid of him then. But I think it more stems from the AD, Scott Strickland, needing to be possibly removed. It's tough too, I think, because you have the interim president, who I don't know where his level of confidence and care is with football. So if anything, I think they should get rid of an AD before they fire Napier, because so far all of Strickland's coaching hires have just kind of been misses, outside of Mullen, where Mullen just kind of quit recruiting in the season, which was the reason why the reason why they got rid of him. But there's just been the miss rate has been too high, and I don't think you can let Strickland. This would be his 4th coach he would be hiring if you fired Napier and kept him. So if you're going to do that, I would just get rid of the AD and start over, like from just top to bottom. And it's just a whole mess, because Napier's talking about, heck, this is his team. Like, he finally has his guys in, but like, if they're going to stink still, you could fire the coach and just restart, and then you're going to lose a bunch of guys again and just kind of get stuck in the same cycle. It's kind of like how Tennessee was. I was telling some people like how, Florida is caught right now in what the Tennessee was for most of the 2010s. where you're stuck in a cycle of irrelevancy and you just can't break it until you finally can hopefully find the right coach that will kind of get you out of that. And that's what Heupel's been. And now Tennessee's back on, as one of the SEC kind of upper middle of the pack teams. Because right now, Florida, the Swamp is no longer, I think, an intimidating place where teams go in thinking they're going to lose. Like it's like check that one off as a loss. I mean, Napier's lost his last 3 games in the Swamp. I think I saw some Urban Meyer lost 2 games in 5 years as the coach of Florida at home. So, I mean, that itself right there, Napier struggled mightily against Power 5 teams. He's 9-15 against Power 4 teams. I guess we want to call it now. 11-15 overall is his record. So it's not good, but I don't know where you go. It's a whole mess there. But Miami, though, before we move on, really, really like what this team is. I think they have weapons on the outside with, led by Restrepo. You also have Damian Martinez in the backfield. The tight end group is good with McCormick and Arroyo. Like, this is a team that can make a run. And now, though, I've seen with the ACC, Florida State stinks. Clemson, we don't know what to do. I don't know what to make of them on offense. Their defense is really good, but the offense is just so-so. There's not a team I watched this weekend that is up to where Miami is. And we're going to see now. Can they kind of now handle this hype that now they're going to be, put on their shoulders? And if they can, that's a sure lock, I think, for the ACC in the playoff. So, all right. We're going to move on, though, to just talk about Clemson for a second there. But the Georgia Bulldogs crushed the Clemson Tigers 34-3 this weekend. It was the noon kickoff in Atlanta. I believe it is the Aflac kickoff. But nonetheless, Georgia it was a slow start for both teams. It looked like all the first half, it was 6-0 Georgia after the first half was over. But it looked like the 2021 meeting when it was 10-3 final. And it was just a defensive slugfest. Offenses just couldn't get going. Georgia stalled in the red zone once, and then Peyton Woodring sophomore kicker, hit a career high 55-yarder. It snuck through on the inside the one post, but a heck of a kick right there, and it ended up being the game-winning kick, actually, if you think about it. So congrats there to Peyton. But the second half adjustments were outstanding offensively. Mike Bobo on the OC, and then, Smart probably working his way into that as well. But really impressed from what I saw from the Georgia offense. Carson Beck played really well. 23 of 33, 278, had a couple touchdowns. Colby Young scored. He's the Miami transfer that they brought in for red zone, be as like that big red zone target they had been missing, and he caught a really nice back shoulder pass. Really stuck out to me. The player stuck out to me was Nate Frazier. He's a freshman running back, and so if you weren't following, so Georgia was down Trevor Etienne, who transferred in from Florida. He was suspended for the game. It was a coach's decision to suspend him due to some off-the-field stuff. His DUI that he had in the offseason was dismissed, but from a disciplinary standpoint, they did suspend him. He did warm up and was on the sideline in pads, but just he didn't play though. And then Roderick Robinson, their second guy, he's out with he had turf toe surgery, so he was gone. So they were down to Branson Robinson, Nate Frazier, Cass Jones as like the big three. Branson Robinson played most of the first half. Just they couldn't get anything going running the football, and Robinson did struggle some. He only rushed for 7. He had 7 carries for 12 yards. Just like they just weren't doing much. And then Nate Frazier stepped in, and he just became kind of like a little spark plug, and was just like a shifty Sony Michel type runner, and was just making moves, getting the offense ahead, making it more manageable downs. Instead of like 2nd down and 8, 3rd down and 9, it was, you were getting those 5 to 7 yard carries, and it really paid dividend, and it kind of kept Georgia ahead, because that's what hurt them, I think, in the first half. They were getting in their own way, some penalties, just not running the football, 3rd down and longs. That's just not what Georgia is. And so they were able to kind of stay ahead of schedule, which opened up big time. And then the playmakers, I think entering the second half, Carson Beck had thrown a ball to 15 different guys. I mean, that's just what Georgia's going to be this year because they don't have – you lose Bowers and McConkey, those kind of like safety nets. So now you're going to be able to – it almost makes them more dangerous because now you're going to be able to spread the ball out, so many different weapons. London Humphreys had a nice touchdown. Arian Smith was involved a lot in like the jet sweep or, the jet sweeps and some screen game. The tight ends were involved. Lawson Lucky led the group there. It was just overall really nice to see. I think Dominic Lovett's going to have to be that guy that's going to be that safety net. He had a few catches, nothing overly crazy, but I think as the season goes on, you're going to see him kind of emerge as maybe that lad McConkey, where you're like you just need a guy to catch a ball. Who are you going to look to? It's going to be Lovett. So as far as defense, really impressed Georgia's defense. There was one play in the first half where Klubnik hit a nice deep shot, got it to about midfield, and it almost felt like the momentum was maybe moving some to Clemson, and then Georgia was able, albeit there was a penalty that pushed Clemson back, and they were going to convert a first down and got called back. But really liked what Georgia did. They were able to make a stand, and they got the ball right back. And Clemson just couldn't do anything offensively. Georgia did lose Michael Williams. He's going to be questionable heading into Saturday's game. I don't think he'll play, strictly just because they're playing Tennessee Tech. Don't expect him to be playing much in that one. Warren Brinson did leave early too. So expect maybe not a full defensive roster ready to roll going into Saturday. I'm not going to treat it like a bye week, but I do expect some of their guys, if they're questionable, not to be playing, knowing that you have Kentucky the week after. You got to go to Lexington the next Saturday night, and then you get the bye before you go to Tuscaloosa. So you're going to need all your guys ready to roll going into this first leg of the SEC stretch. As far as Clemson goes, though, defensively, really liked what I saw. Peter Woods is an absolute animal. They really played the run well in the first half. Wade Woodaz is their linebacker. He played really well. TJ Parker was in it a few times. RJ Mickens was really good. I think as the game went on, you just started to see either they were just gassed out or just knew, like, listen, our offense isn't doing anything. What are we out here for? I'm not going to say that was like quitting or like kind of just slowing down, not going a full 100%, but you could almost see them just kind of being like just losing interest slowly as the game went on. Offensively, though, I need to see more from Clemson. They're just nothing. Cade Klubnik, is he the guy? I mean, I didn't see anything. From the first play of the game, he missed a wide open guy out of the flat. It threw it behind him, I think. And just from that moment on, like, it was just like, oh no, this is going to be a long day. The wide receiver room did play a little better. Tyler Brown, I thought played really well. I think outside of that, though, like, not much. Phil Maffa played all right. I think he had 16 carries, 59 yards. I mean, they didn't run the ball really well at all, and the O-line was starting to get wrecked on as Klubnik took a beating because Georgia's defense had 2 sacks, 6 tackles for loss. They were just getting to Klubnik after every throw. Like, he was hitting the turf majority of the time in that second half. And, I really don't know what to make of it because it's just their inability to recruit well, just either through the portal, through recruiting and high school route, is just kind of starting to show a little bit more now. This game was a perfect example of where Georgia's at and where Clemson's at. And Clemson is just not where they used to be. And it's because they're just not winning they're not winning those recruiting battles they used to. They're not recruiting out of the portal. And so you're just playing with the guys that you kept around and then whatever's left. And that's just going to be how it is. And if you can't win with them, then you're really screwed. And I don't think this is a bad team. Like, this is a team that will probably contend for the ACC. But I got to see better quarterback play. Klubnik has not shown me anything that has proved that. I expected them to be a little more consistent. Second full year with Riley in the offseason, or the OC, Garrett Riley, and Klubnik. Just haven't seen that whatever connection, just in that next step. And hopefully we start seeing it. I mean, they get App State this upcoming week, which is no gimme. I mean, they're a dark horse for the group of four, or the group of five playoff spot. But then you get NC State and then Stanford at Florida State, which right now possibly looking as a winnable game. I mean, the schedule's still all right. Like, it sets up pretty nice, but like, I just want to see more consistency from this group offensively. Defensively, they're going to be good, but offensively, I need to see more, and I haven't seen it yet. Hopefully, we start seeing it some as the year goes on, but we're gonna, we're gonna see, we're gonna see. But moving on though to the other noon kickoff, which didn't end till later in the afternoon because of a rain delay, was Penn State rolling West Virginia 34-12. Excuse me. The Nittany Lions rolled into Morgantown, and for first quarter or so, it was a little slow for both fronts. There was a time, I can't remember which quarter it was. The Penn State fumbled the ball, and then the next play, West Virginia fumbled it right back to. So just a lot of just sloppy football at the beginning, but it did kind of shape itself up a little better as that first half went on. Penn State, when they finally kind of broke through and scored, it just felt like almost like a kill shot in a sense. Not even like the death blow, but just kind of like took out all the momentum that West Virginia had built. There were, some poor play call decisions in Penn State territory when West Virginia had fourth and short calls. They decided to roll with the dice and go for them, and they didn't get them. I want to say they missed at least two. They missed 2 fourth down conversions. They went 3 for 4, so they did get the one. Yeah, well, there really should have been 2. There was one. Don't know how they went to review with the one spot and they gave it to him. But outside of that, Penn State controlled the game. I was really impressed offensively. I had questions with the offense as far as like you bring in a new OC, you have a second-year quarterback who we saw flashes last year, but just offensively overall, they just struggled getting any explosive shots down the field against quality opponents. And West Virginia, no slouch, came in winning 9 games last year. You're playing them on the road, and I was really impressed from what I saw. Aller, nothing flashy as far as the completions and throwing the ball, but 216 yards, did have 3 touchdowns. There were some throws though he made where I think he's probably the only quarterback in the Big Ten that's making those throws. I mean, just fastballs just on the dot, right to the receivers. I was really impressed that from the wide receiver group, I had questions marks about if there would be a number one guy that would be able to step up, and there was. Harrison Wallace stepped up. He's going to be, I think, that wide receiver one guy in that room. Had 117 yards, 5 catches, and 2 touchdowns. He had a really nice touchdown right before the end of the half. That kind of like the Miami game when Miami went right back down the field, and I think Restrepo scored right before half. Like, it just kind of sucked out all the momentum and just energy in the building going into the half. And then they ran the ball extremely well. Singleton and Katron Allen. Singleton led the group, though. He had 114 yards rushing on 13 carries, scored a touchdown. But, Katron Allen had 10 carries for 20 yards. Nothing crazy. I think they just kind of, you leaned on that, the guy that was just having the most success. As far as West Virginia goes, just struggled offensively. The play calling was a little too conservative. Like, they weren't doing anything that was like flashy or special. Like, they weren't testing Penn State at all. It was a lot of just short yard throws or running the ball and like long distance. And I just didn't understand what they were trying to accomplish with that. Like, you're playing a team, a top 10 opponent at home. Why are you playing into their strengths? You need to stretch the ball down the field and try to just attack the secondary. There was a new secondary with a lot of guys that was replacing a trio that had been there. And why not try to put stress on them? Like, there was nothing that scared them at all. And they weren't able to run the ball well, but they continued to try to keep running the ball, even though they were down a bunch. I understand you want to stick to what you're good at, but at some point you've got to be able to just push the ball down the field some. And they weren't. And, Garrett Green did get under duress a bunch. I was really liking what I saw from that Penn State front. kind of like what I mean, Kevin Winston, an absolute animal for them. He's the second safety guy. I mean, the secondary played really well for Penn State, but like, as far as the front goes, like, Abdul Carter played really well. Just the whole front just really just set the tone and didn't allow West Virginia to do anything. And, they had the couple fourth down stops. It was just Penn State. I mean, they saw us last year. Penn State was just the better team in Happy Valley when they played West Virginia. And then same thing here. Now, as far as West Virginia goes, looking big picture, I still think this is a team that can keep or stay relevant in the Big 12. But I just want to see more from Green in this whole offense. The O-line struggled mightily, and defensively, the two biggest question marks West Virginia had going into the year, into this game, was the O-line and the secondary, and it kind of showed because there were times where the secondary looked lost, and there was guys just running wide open, and then offensive line wise, they just struggled getting any run push, and then keeping Green up front. I mean, he was sacked twice, 6 tackles for loss. So just nothing special from West Virginia at all. And, hopefully they can rebound Penn State wise. I think they're going to continue to roll. Again, he looked really well last year against West Virginia, but that November 2nd game against Ohio State, remember, they don't play Michigan. You don't play Oregon. Can you win the game that you struggled the most in? And that was the Ohio State game. And we're going to see. I mean, he's going to play some good defenses later this year. USC looked like a pretty good defense, like a bend, don't break D, but vastly improved. We'll talk about them in a little bit. Wisconsin, is going to always be a solid D. Ohio State is the big one. But outside of that, like, the schedule works Penn State's favor. If they can get over that hump, this could be a really nice team we're seeing this year. But moving on now. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast. We are at 93 subscribers. We picked up a bunch after last episode, so really appreciate it. I really love how the video duration was really up. I think it was over 7.5 minutes. Finally, it was at the beginning, it was close to about 10 to 11 minutes. So I really appreciate you guys actually watching and seeing what I'm all about here. Just keep on subscribing though if you are watching, and if you're new, again, subscribe, like the video, follow us on Spotify at College Football Talk with Hunter. So, moving back on though to the recap. Notre Dame heads to Texas, gets a Texas-sized win, and defeats the Aggies 23-13. Really impressed. This was a sloppy fight for most of the game, and where both teams kind of just struggled getting much going. But that's credit to both defenses. Like, that's what I expected, a lower scoring type game, and that's what we got. I mean, it was a rock fight for most of the game. Both quarterbacks, nothing flashy. Riley Leonard played better than Connor Wegman did, but he played well enough to win. He was really, really effective on the ground using his legs, and that's why he was brought in to add like that extra element in the run game. He had 12 carries, 63 yards, along with his 158 yards throwing the football. But really impressed. I was curious to see how Notre Dame's offensive line was going to step up. Remember, this was a front that had lost one of their top offensive linemen for the year entering the game. And that group in total had a combined 6 starts. And so now you're going into uncharted, you're going into enemy territory against a very good defensive line. And they held their own very well. Notre Dame rushed for 198 yards. Jeremiah Love was that guy, that running back that stepped up big time. I think he's going to kind of emerge now as that RB1. It was going to be probably by committee for the most part. I thought maybe with Jadaria Price, but he was able to step up huge. He had 91 yards, including a long 29-yard touchdown run that kind of started the scoring. And at that time, there were no touchdowns. Like, that was the first one that scored. And so he kind of set the pace. And then and then Price scored at the end. But it was a very impressive display in the trenches wise, and then defensively, Notre Dame really impressed on that front. I think I talked about it some, like how this defense is going to keep them in games. The secondary played out of their mind. Xavier Watts led that group, just making plays. He made the big play at the end of the game on that fourth down stop, and I have it written down here in like my Notre Dame notes. But like in the preview, but like he should be strong. The secondary should be strong, led by safety Xavier Watts, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, he completely kind of led that front. They shut down the pass game for A&M. I expected more from Connor Wegman. I thought I was higher up on him than as one of those like guys in the SEC that can maybe finally make a name. He's finally healthy, and now he has the full reins now, and struggled mightily. Came out, I was impressed. Like he came out, I think yesterday at a press conference and just took full responsibility and said, he flat out like has to be better. And so, they're going to get it turned around. They do go to Gainesville next weekend, so that's going to be a big test. Maybe a get right. They ran the ball decently with Le'Veon Moss, but I mean, just had trouble getting started all night long. Just no creativity. There was no juice. They just kept stalling drives after drive after drive. And, they had the one touchdown drive, but outside of that, it was just nothing flashy, nothing good. Wide receiver room, nobody really stepped up as a guy. And that partly belongs also with how poorly Wegman played. The defense held up pretty good. And I think for most of the game, stopped Notre Dame from what they wanted to do for the better half of the game. But eventually towards the back end, you could start to see the O-line, which was the more impressive part, started to step up from Notre Dame's side and just take over. And, I think Skorton got hurt, and they just, really struggled to stop the run. And that really ended up being the difference maker because Notre Dame didn't do anything flashy during throwing the football. Did think Tyler Brown where was he? Give me 1 second here. Trying to find the receiver's name. Bo Collins. I was thinking of Tyler Brown from Clemson. Bo Collins, who transferred from Clemson, he emerged as like that wide receiver one, I think. He had 5 catches, 62 yards. He led the group. The next highest was Greathouse, who had 26 yards. Chris Mitchell was the guy they brought in from FIU as like maybe that next big receiver too. He only had 1 catch, so maybe they start getting him involved more. I think it's just it could be, they're guarding him a little more than some of the other guys because they didn't want him to beat them. And just the overall defense A&M was like A&M's could be a solid front defensively. I just want to see more from their offense that can kind of propel them to get more wins against these bigger time opponents. Oh, I mean, Notre Dame going forward though. I mean, are they a playoff lock? I don't want to say yes because after week 1, you don't want to just break out the overreaction stick, but the schedule is nothing. I mean, they play 2 more true road games before the year's over, and that's it. They play at Purdue, and then they finish at USC. They get Navy and Georgia Tech at neutral sites. So there's nothing flashy. I mean, their next 4 games before their bye week is Northern Illinois, Purdue, Miami, Ohio, and Louisville. Louisville beat them last year, but they get them in South Bend this year, so maybe it's a little different. I mean, there's just nothing. I mean, Florida State is now not an impressive game if they continue to play their plan. Georgia Tech maybe, and it being in Atlanta, and then USC at the end of the year. So, like, this is a very, very suitable schedule. And if the offense kind of continues to find its rhythm and find that, find more scoring, playing with that defense, this is a playoff team for sure. I mean, there's no doubt they are a post week 1 lock right now at this point. So, and they honestly have to. There's no room for 1 loss or more than 1 loss in this with that schedule. Because remember, they don't get that one of the buys, so the best they can get is the 5 seed, and you have to leave at least 1 spot for a group of 5 team. So if Notre Dame loses more than one game with this schedule, it's going to be tough for them to be put in. But I just don't see more than one loss on the schedule. Maybe USC at the end of the year. But if that secondary is playing the way they're playing, I don't see USC beating them. So really fun game to watch there, especially after some of the blowouts that were happening earlier on the day. Just finally see like a competitive game for 4 quarters. Really nice to see. Just from a fan perspective. All right. Now, speaking of competitive games, though, the USC LSU game Sunday night really, I think, was the game of the weekend. And as the standalone game in the Sunday spot, you'd hope that's the case. But we're thinking, were we actually going to get it? Give me 1 second here. I'm just going to find my USC spot here. But USC gets the win, though. Here, I got to change the headers up. Come on. I got to be better. Oh, here. Yeah. So USC gets the win. 27-20, as they put it right there in the headline. Hits the jackpot in Las Vegas. It was a back-and-forth type game. Both quarterbacks played extremely well. I think what I was really most taken away by was how good both of the defenses looked. Remember, these are 2 of the worst defenses in the country last year. Just pitiful. I mean, LSU had a Heisman-winning quarterback and didn't make the playoff. That was a national title team if they had a mediocre defense. They brought in Blake Baker from Missouri and did see some improvement. Still lacking some in the secondary and getting pressure. They were getting kind of close, but they were never getting home. And I think if they can kind of figure that part out, that will help them out. But as far as USC first, because USC won, we're going to talk about them. Miller Moss played out of his mind. Really, really impressed by how he played. He just was able to he looked really comfortable back there. He was really poised. He threw for 378 yards. He only had the 1 touchdown, but it was the go-ahead touchdown at the end of the game. Or excuse me, at the time it was, and then LSU tied it with the field goal. But 10.5 yards an average catch. The playmakers on the outside, I mean, USC, I had never worried about their playmakers in that wide receiver group, but like Kyron Hudson, Zachariah Branch are going to be really good. Running the football, I thought they ran the ball well with Woody Marks. He had 2 touchdowns, including the go-ahead score. I think what really stuck out to me too was going back to the defense, USC's defensive line able to kind of control LSU running the football. That's what I was really worried about because, I mean, LSU preseason by majority had the number 1 lineman room. Sorry, just like swallowing on my own stuff right here. But I mean, that was a preseason O-line room that was supposed to be like a Joe Moore award-winning room, and a veteran group that just couldn't just take over the game. That's why I thought LSU was going to kind of run away with this, because LSU, I thought, was going to be able to just control the line of scrimmage and just do whatever they wanted to. I mean, they ran the ball for just over 100 yards, but like John Emery was their leading rusher with only 61 yards. And, you know, if Nussmeyer's not playing the way he played, he had 304 yards, the 2 touchdowns. I mean, this is a lot bigger, I think, deficit than what the final score indicated. Kyron Lacy is going to have a big year. He had he had a touchdown in the first half that was just really, really nice. But he did something that I wrote down as one of my takeaways, like just LSU as a whole got too conservative towards the back end of the game. There was a point in the fourth quarter, they were up 4 with the ball, under 5 minutes to go, and couldn't get a first down. They got conservative running the ball, and USC said, okay, we're going to make a stop like they did, and we know your defense is struggling some. They're reeling a little bit, and so they kind of knew that, and so they went right back down the field and scored. There were silly decisions made from LSU. First drive of the game, Brian Kelly decides that he doesn't want to take the 3 points. He goes for it on 4th and goal. They don't get it. There were some boneheaded penalties. There was a targeting call. It was a bang play, but still, Kyron Lacy doing his touchdown celebration. Something questionable there. Just some stuff that it's like, what are you doing? Like, don't do it. You're just hurting your team by doing that. And they did. And it hurt him. It hurt him for sure. Defense, I think it's going to end up being a bend, don't break approach. I don't know where Harold Perkins was last night or Sunday, but I'd like to know where he is. And especially when the game mattered some, because he didn't make any plays down the stretch. He did lead the team in tackles, but where was he when the game was on the line? I need my best guys to step up. Major Burns was second in the tackles, but he had a boneheaded penalty. They played well to win this game, but just again, you mix all that in with the conservative playing too conservative. They got the ball back on the fourth down. That USC went for it from around midfield, didn't get it, and then I believe it was Major Burns that had a stupid penalty after the play was over. And instead of taking the ball over at midfield in the fourth quarter up 4, they backed themselves up to about their own 25 or 30. And again, then that's when they didn't get a first down, gave the ball right back, and then USC went from there. They said thank you. So if LSU can just clean up the boneheaded decisions, I think this is going to be a good team. They're going to destroy Nichols. They're probably going to beat South Carolina because South Carolina struggled mightily this past weekend. Honorary loser of the week. I should add them to the losers of the week. They weren't, but now I'm thinking about it. I didn't. They struggled mightily with Old Dominion. They're going to get UCLA and South Alabama for the bye week, and then they're going to really get into SEC play. I mean, if they can just kind of clean up themselves and kind of find their footing still some on defense, I think they're going to be okay. USC, if the defense can play like it did last night all year, this could be a sneaky team for sure. They get Utah State. They get the bye week before they got to go to Michigan. That's going to be a big one. I mean, if they can stop the run as well as they did Sunday against Michigan, where they're going to want to run the football really well, that could be a sneaky game, especially if Miller Moss can out-duel that secondary for Michigan. Schedule's tough, but there are wins now. I mean, it just all depends now on this defense. I'm never worried about the offense, but defensively, can they play good enough football for an entire season? Hopefully this wasn't just a flash in the pan, because it's a big game, SEC team, standalone, got to play well. But if they can put this together for majority of the season, this is a sneaky team for sure that can maybe make some noise in that playoff field. But that's going to be it, though, for the recaps. I know there were some other teams, some other games that we didn't talk about, but, some of them, I'll briefly mention here with the winners and losers of the week. Florida State struggled mightily. Boston College with a big win. Vanderbilt gets a nice win against Virginia Tech. Bama, there were a lot of blowouts. Obviously, playing some cupcake teams. I think 5 teams in the SEC had shutouts, and believe they all scored over 59 points or more in those games. Tennessee won by 62. A lot of blowouts. Big Ten went 17-1 this weekend. Really impressive there. But again, you're playing, the level of competition, though. So it's like a flash in the pan type thing, because some of these teams will not be winning as much later on in the year. But we'll move right into winners of the week here as the show wraps up here. Winners of the week, though, I have them listed right there. For Vanderbilt beating Virginia Tech at home as a 2-touchdown dog. Very impressed. Clark Lee finally gets almost like a statement. He's like a big landmark win. And that's how bad Vanderbilt's been, where Virginia Tech is your landmark win. Really impressed. They controlled the game for most of the day. They let the game slip away at the end, and they had to go to overtime, but they scored, made a huge defensive stop, and got the win. Miami, obviously we talked about them. Georgia, really impressed by both those teams. Boston College, though, is that they played last night. They handled Florida State. Florida State, we'll talk about them. They're a loser of the week. But Boston College, so really impressed. This was Bill O'Brien's first game as the head coach at Boston College. Quarterback play was really good with Castellanos. They ran the ball. Robichaux was really good running in between the tackles and outside. They exploited Florida State for their weaknesses. The linebacker group couldn't stop the wheel routes that they were running or just running the football. And that just overall, I mean, they had over 100 I think it was 198 yards rushing before the fourth quarter had even started. Like, that's how bad Florida State was last night, stopping the run. Killed them against Georgia Tech, and it killed them again last night. But that's for Florida State. Boston College, though, hell of a win. They played Florida State really well last year, and that was a team that was supposed to go to the playoff. And I was at home. They go to Doak and get a win like that. Really, really nice start for the Bill O'Brien era there. For a team that wasn't really picked to make a lot of noise. So really nice start there. Losers of the week, though, Oregon. They did win, but they were in a dogfight with Idaho for pretty much till it's like the 5-minute mark left in the fourth. I don't know, maybe if that's his first game breaking through, maybe, new quarterback, just maybe kind of getting his feet wet some, but like, just wasn't. They got burned on a few trick plays that ended up being scores for Idaho, but like, it's Idaho and you win by 10. So I'm no shot against Idaho, but I'm as a team that I have predicted to be a national title runner-up. I want to see a little more from you guys. So hopefully they get that figured out. They get Boise State next week, and then they got the Civil War at Oregon State. So hopefully they can get that figured out. But they get the win, but just ugly. Just I want to see them a little more. The next 4 teams all lost. So just a heads up there. Obviously you can tell if you're watching on YouTube. Florida State and Florida both looked gross. That game at the end of the year is looking mighty more and more like the toilet bowl if they continue to play how they're playing. Florida State 0-2, not just 0-2, 0-2 in conference play. So they're really, really in the 8 ball now. Quarterback play, no improvement. Defensively, they can't stop the run. And this is a D-line that was supposed to have NFL guys on that team. I mean, measurables wise, they stack up, but like, they're not making any difference plays. I mean, they can't stop the run. They're not getting pressure. The linebacker group's struggling much. And why throw the ball when you can just run the ball a bunch? I mean, that's what so far Georgia Tech and Boston College have just done. They're not overthinking it. They're just simple run plays. I mean, they are getting pushed off the line by a couple yards. And runs that should be about 2 to 3 yards are becoming the 5 to 6 yard carries. And it just doesn't make sense with the athletes that Florida State has on that front. They shouldn't be able to run the ball as well as opponents have been, and they are. And the 2 dual threat running quarterbacks right now are killing this team. And they'll see a few more of them this year. I mean, they get Memphis this next week. Mike Norvell Reunion Bowl. I'm going to pull up their schedule here. And then they get, but as far as like dual threat quarterbacks go, SMU, Clemson, club that can run the ball a little bit. Duke, Malik Murphy. Miami, Cam Ward will run the ball. North Carolina, you're going to see a little more dual threat from there. And then Notre Dame, obviously, Riley Leonard. And then Florida, if depending on whichever quarterback plays, there's a little bit of dual threat in there. But if they can't stop the run, I don't know how many wins are on this schedule because a lot of these teams have really good running backs and can run the football well. So that's going to be something. I don't know what they do at the quarterback position. If something needs to change to become like maybe next week, if he's still struggling, you go to Brock Glenn. Just to get some sort of juice and energy into this offense that just can't do anything right now. So, and people saying like Uyangale is bad, like it's the quarterback he's been for 3-4 years now. 3 different schools. Nothing's changed. People look at that first game he had when he filled in for Trevor Lawrence when they played at Notre Dame. He threw for over like 350 yards, played out of his mind. They lost, I think, but like still, like that was a flash in the pan example at its finest right there. Like, he is not that kind of guy. I mean, he struggles throwing the ball down the field. He's a dink and dunk kind of guy. And if you can get a little pressure on him, it's over. He's not very athletic when you get him out of the pocket. And he's a good short yardage runner, but like, he's not the kind of guy that is going to beat you with his legs as like a difference maker. So he's just a mediocre quarterback. That's just what he is. As far as Florida goes, again, we talked about it. Like, just where do you start for them? Defensively, they got to get better. Tackling was an issue. Missed assignments, pressure. That was just on defense. Offensively, no explosivity going down the field. Not using your playmakers. They just didn't run the ball very effectively. So they got to get better. Minnesota, they did lose. Was the only Big Ten team to lose, and whoever was controlling the fireworks didn't realize that they lost and missed a field goal, and so kind of a miss part there. So Minnesota's a loser, and then Virginia Tech, dark horse to win the ACC. I picked them to finish third, I think, in the ACC. Not sure what I saw this weekend against Vanderbilt as a 2-touchdown favorite, but need to see more from. I need to see more. Need to be better. Especially a team with high hopes like that can't be starting the year off like that for sure. And they get Marshall and Old Dominion coming up, but got to be better. Got to be better. So that's all we're going to have this week on College Football Talk. Make sure, like I said, if you're new to the podcast, subscribe. Really need the subscription numbers to get up. Trying to get to the 100 mark. We've gained subscribers the last few episodes, so really love that. Keep subscribing if you're new to the podcast. Watch and leave a big like button also. And if you're on Spotify, listen and follow there as well. We'll be back, or I'll be back sometime later this week for week 2 preview. Until then, though, make sure you guys are subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.